All right, another Friday, another video talking about Mando. Also, spoiler warning for this episode of Mando and previous episodes of Mando. You know, you've been warned. As always, it's hard to talk about these episodes and not talk about spoilers. And yeah, this episode has them. Without the spoilers, I'd be like, so Baby Yoda sat on a rock and stormtroopers and stuff. What a boring video that would be. So okay, where we left off, Ahsoka said, all right, take the child to this place, this rock, and sit him on the rock. And if there are other Jedi out there, they'll hear the call, which that is a correction I need to make. When I first heard it, I kind of heard it as her going, there are other Jedi out there, and they'll hear him. When in reality, she said it's possible for other Jedi to hear him, basically insinuating if they're out there, they'll hear him, maybe. And that's a maybe if they're even out there. So she doesn't really know. At first I was like, how many other Jedi are there? I know, she's not a Jedi. She has professed it many times. But that's the gist. They show up on this planet and he's like, I don't know, does this look Jedi to you? I was like, dude, they're big rocks stacked among other big rocks to form rocks that are ominously looming over a domed rock in the middle in the form of an altar. It looks like a structure that's from the movie Krull. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you've hit the call center of the Jedi. So hey, sit there, Baby Yoda, and make a call. Mando sits baby Grogu there, and he's like, all right, kid, make the call. Then you see the Slave One come down, and he's like, danger. Let's go to work. It's funny that the first thing he thought was, oh, that's bad news. I don't know, could have been some farmer there to pick berries. He didn't know someone was there to cause trouble. Anyhow, turns out to be Tamara Morrison as Boba Fett. He's teamed up with Ming-Na Wen's character, whom he saved. That was actually him. Those were his feet that walked up to her. So people who said, hey, that's Boba Fett, props, you called it. And he was like, that Boba Fett armor, well, I guess I wouldn't call it that. That armor that you got off of Timothy Olyphant, who was the sheriff, who was a sheriff and everything. So of course he played the sheriff in the Mandalorian. That armor belongs to me. It belonged to my father Django before me. And I'm a simple man trying to make my way in the galaxy like my father. I was like, no, Boba Fett. Your father was a simple man trying to make his way in the universe. He was much larger scale. Anyhow, stormtroopers come down while Baby Yoda's dialing in. And I don't just mean dialing in. I don't mean like, oh, hey, I sent a tweet. No, he's dialing in how we all remember dialing in when we tried to sneak a titty pic when our parents weren't home or weren't looking. Gonna be a second. Mando's like, well, at least they're just stormtroopers. And you know what he was thinking? Oh boy, leftovers. Because that's all you can think when you see stormtroopers, just lambs to the slaughter. And so Boba Fett and Mando, they go to work. They team up. Pretty sweet to see, not gonna lie. Glad to see that. And yeah, these stormtroopers just get slaughtered. Which I suppose that's aided in the fact that Mando's armor's pretty god mode, as we've seen. I mean, that metal deflects lightsabers, so there is that. So blaster bolts don't stand a chance. But he's always getting shot, just like bing, 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 bing. Hold on. Bing, 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 bing. Sights are a little off. Bing, 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 bing. Gotta work on these sights. What, was there danger? What, were you scared? Also, gaffy sticks are pretty sweet. Boba Fett has the gaffy stick. Whenever he'd crack a stormtrooper, the armor would just shatter. I always saw gaffy sticks as like this warrior stick. If a warrior stick had erectile dysfunction. Turns out, yeah, they're pretty badass. But undeniably, the money shot is seeing Boba Fett in his armor. I mean, he doesn't have all of it. You know, the pants are different, sure. But for the most part, and he just wrecks it. Which, that's the new thing in Star Wars. When someone's being badass, they have to shoot something without looking at him. Wait, Boba Fett's being awesome, but did he shoot a stormtrooper without looking at him? Bam! There you go. Then Moff Gideon's like, okay, well, we wasted a lot of time with those stormtroopers. Why do we even still have them? Because we have dark troopers. Send in the dark troopers to get the child. Which again, if you called dark troopers, I didn't know really what I was looking at. To some of you out there in my comment section, you called dark troopers, and they are indeed dark troopers. Dark troopers come down with their jetpacks and they land, and then they get exponentially slower. Like their flight path is pretty fast and they land and like, let's get him. Like, oh, you probably should have landed a few feet closer to him. Would have saved you a minute and a half. Doesn't matter because they get little Baby Yoda and they fly off with him and it's sad. There's there's something about it. First of all, he was all adorable sleeping there. And then the dark troopers just kidnap him. Boba Fett tries to follow and then he's like, that's an Imperial Star Destroyer. I'm not doing that. Also, Mando, sorry about your ship. Yeah, Mando's ship just got wasted from orbit. I've always wondered that, why the Empire doesn't do that more. A Star Destroyer will be up there. And then I get it. In Empire Strikes Back, they had to take out the shield generator. They had a shield. The rebels had a shield, so they couldn't just bombard them from space. So they had to send down the walkers. The Empire's all about walking slow, flying fast. You think that's their slogan? Walk slow, fly fast. The Empire wants you to die horribly, because when people see you getting off that ship and you're a stormtrooper, they're just like, oh boy. Leftovers. But seriously, join up, it'll be fun. But yeah, Mando's ship just gets obliterated, wasted, completely destroyed. I mean, the ship is gone. That's a pretty big deal. But Boba Fett's like, tell you what, Mando, since this is a Star Wars show, we'll team up with you. Because now fans can make videos about how Mando and Boba Fett teamed up. Mando, Boba Fett, Ming-Na Wen, and they're gonna go get Bill Burr. They're forming a crew now, folks. A crew, because they need to get Baby Yoda back. Because he was all adorable when he's just there with his little shackles. The shackles that are like as big as a finger on but it's like a little shackle. Poor guy. He's the cutest little son of a bitch I've ever seen. Other than my dogs. Those of you out there who are about to say otherwise, you hold those comments. My dogs read these things. So yeah, that's where we leave off, is Moff Gideon has Baby Yoda, and he's like, okay, now we have our source. Whatever that means, the source. I'll get to that in a second. Theorizing and such. And Mando's like, we gotta put together a crew and get little Baby Yoda back. Grogu. Yeah. Grogu, Goku. Baby Yoda. Stop with that. His name is Grogu. You can't call him Baby Yoda anymore. Mando has a name that I don't remember, and don't call him either. Save your fake outrage for Twitter. Besides which, his name is Baba Yaga. For those smart enough to remember. And so we see the plot of The Mandalorian and the point of Mandalorian again come into focus. The rabble of Imperial zealots still holding on to the Empire have a plan. That plan involves Baby Yoda being a host, probably to harvest his midichlorians, possibly to explain how Palpatine came back in The Rise of Skywalker, possibly to explain how someone cloned him. I know when in that cloning facility episode, the one with Carl Weathers, where they all go and they raid that facility, and it's a cloning facility, and you see it like, you know, the messed up looking clones in the glass. I agree with you. I thought Snoke. And then my brain was immediately like, don't need that. Don't do that. I just forgot Snoke, because it's just kind of like, well, that's sequel trilogy. I don't need to hold on to that. But, and this is possibly the point of all of it, it's quite possible they're using Mandalorian to not only do spin-off shows with Boba Fett, Ahsoka Tano, whoever else, but possibly to flesh out the world of the sequel trilogy. If that's what they're doing, that sounds like they have their work cut out for them. But I can see it happening because in Star Wars, there's been another scenario where a television show fleshed out a trilogy that some people hated on, myself included. And I thought it was impossible for them to flesh it out for me to give a shit. I was like, oh, Clone Wars, don't care. And people were like, no, it really does flesh it out. I was like, don't care. Then I watched it. I was like, wow, that really does flesh it out. Now, should the prequels have stood on their own, not needing a series, a television show to flesh it out? Sure. But it did, and the end product is actually something that's interesting, but that's where the prequels and the sequel trilogy is where it's different. With the prequels, you still had the vision of one person. You had this lore building and this world building. Imperfect, yes. Flawed, absolutely. So if you could flesh that out with something, you could have a really interesting world there. With the sequel trilogy, there's no vision like that. There's no world building. There's no lore building. It just seems like an unplanned series of tug of war and lack of vision. So fleshing that out, I don't think it probably won't feel like it did with the prequels and Clone Wars. But again, I said prequels and Clone Wars was impossible, so anything's possible. It could happen. And in 10 years' time, there could be fans of the sequels who are like, you should watch all these TV shows, it really fleshes it out. But I won't lie, at the thought of it tying into the sequel trilogy, I get that feeling of like, Because behind the mask of every pessimist is the face of a disappointed optimist. And I'm the disappointed optimist when it comes to the sequel movie. The advantage they do have is that there's such a chasm of time between episode 6 and the sequels that you don't have to tie it in. But that's the point, is they should stick with Mandalorian being an interesting show in its own right. And thus far, that's what they've done. Also be kind of weird that Mandalorian, this pretty well budgeted show, this big budget show, was created to explain something that was clearly an afterthought for episode 9. Palpatine coming back. Oh, well, since you dropped that on us, J.J. Abrams, 1 week before we started filming. Exaggeration, probably. But yeah, since you dropped that on us, we'll make an entire show explaining that. Which makes that line in Rise of Skywalker that Palpatine said that he said in Revenge of the Sith, it makes it weird in context if this is where they're going with it. Dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. And by dark side of the Force, I mean science.
Cloning, bitches. What else would it be? That little thing I said just now? That's me dropping a line from Revenge of the Sith to get people on board with this mess. A cheap tactic, to be sure, but never underestimate the power of nostalgia and a reference.
But I do still think a conversation between Ahsoka and the kin of Anakin Skywalker, I think that would be a good thing for everybody, all the characters involved. Which is funny because Rex was in the Battle of Endor. He was in the Battle of Endor like that kid from Iron Man 2 is Peter Parker. You know, they're tying stuff in retroactively. But the point is, canonically, that's Rex. And so Rex was in the rebellion when Luke Skywalker was. He must have recognized the name. So he might have been like, I knew your father in the Clone Wars. Great Jedi. Died tragically in the temple raid. Very sad. Luke can be like, yeah, totally how it happened. So maybe he got some stories about Anakin Skywalker. Also, maybe Rex is where Luke learned the name of Darth Sidious. Rex could be like, oh yeah, Darth Sidious. He was the Chancellor who became the Emperor who runs everything now. He gave Order 66. I remember it very clearly. Anyhow, there's your story. That's his name, Darth Sidious. Now you know. Who knows? But Ahsoka was closer to Anakin than Rex was, you know? That was a master-apprentice type relationship, you know? They were the same religion, and she was his apprentice. So I feel like she has a unique insight into Anakin Skywalker that she could offer. But I'm saying, we'll see where they go. If for nothing else, Mandalorian is definitely that thing where they're like, we need to get Star Wars back on track with fans. We need to have something that shows people why the world of Star Wars is actually cool. So we'll see where all of it goes, but the point is, I am here theorizing, talking about it, and interested to do so. And that feels good. Regardless, I imagine Ezra's coming into it, because if Thrawn is out there, the implication is Ezra is too, and why would they mention Thrawn if, you know. Alright, so The Mandalorian Season 2, Episode 6, a team up of Mando, Boba Fett, and Boba Fett's half-cyborg apprentice partner. What did you think about it? What are your theories going forward as to what they're doing with all of it? Whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.